You know, there comes a moment in your life when you begin to realize that walking alone isn't a punishment. It's not something that happened to you because you're difficult or because you're too much or because there's something wrong with you. Walking alone is actually a sign that you've awakened to something most people spend their entire lives running from. You've awakened to your true self, and that changes everything. Most people live their entire lives trying to fit in. They spend decades molding themselves, shaping themselves, cutting off parts of who they are just to belong. They silence their inner voice because it doesn't match what everyone else is saying. They dim their light because it makes others uncomfortable. They follow the crowd even when the crowd is heading straight off a cliff. And they do all of this because they're terrified of being alone. But you're different. Something inside you refused to play that game anymore. Maybe it happened gradually, or maybe it happened all at once, but at some point you looked around and realized that fitting in was costing you everything. It was costing you your peace. It was costing you your authenticity. It was costing you your very soul. And you made a choice. You chose yourself. You chose truth. You chose to walk alone rather than walk in the wrong direction with everyone else. Now, let me tell you something important. When you make this choice, when you decide to honor your authentic self, people are going to react. Some will be confused, some will be angry, some will call you selfish. Some will say you've changed, and they'll say it like it's a bad thing. They'll try to pull you back into the old patterns, the old ways of being, because your growth threatens their comfort. Your evolution challenges their stagnation. Your light reminds them of the darkness they've chosen to accept. This is why the chosen ones walk alone. Not because they want to be alone, but because they're no longer willing to betray themselves for companionship. They've learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely. They've learned that you can be surrounded by people and feel completely isolated, and you can be completely alone and feel totally connected to the universe. You see, when you're living authentically, when you're aligned with your highest self, you operate on a different frequency. Most people are living in fear. They're operating from a place of lack, of scarcity, of limitation. They're worried about what others think. They're concerned with status and image and keeping up appearances. They're running on old programming, old beliefs that were handed down to them by people who are also living in fear. But you've broken free from that. You've recognized that there's another way to live. You've seen that life can be lived from a place of love rather than fear, from abundance rather than scarcity, from possibility rather than limitation. And once you see this, once you truly understand it, you can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. This creates a natural separation. It has to. Because you're no longer resonating with the same things. The conversations that used to interest you now feel empty. The activities that used to excite you now feel meaningless. The relationships that used to fulfill you now feel draining. And this isn't because you're being judgmental or because you think you're better than anyone else. It's simply because you've outgrown those things. You've evolved past them, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually beautiful. Think about a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. The butterfly doesn't judge the caterpillars. It doesn't think it's better than them. But it also doesn't try to crawl on the ground anymore, pretending it doesn't have wings. It flies. It has to fly. That's its nature now. And you, my friend, you have wings. You've transformed. And now you must fly, even if it means flying alone for a while. The truth is that walking alone is often a necessary part of your spiritual evolution. It's in the solitude that you truly get to know yourself. It's in the quiet that you hear the voice of your higher self. It's in the stillness that you connect with the infinite intelligence that flows through all things. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, by other people's opinions, by society's expectations, it's nearly impossible to hear your own inner guidance. But when you're alone, when you've created that space, that's when the real magic happens. This is when you start to understand that you're not really alone at all. You're connected to something much greater than yourself. You're part of the universal consciousness. You're an individualized expression of the divine. And when you tap into that connection, when you really feel it, you realize that you have access to infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinite power. You don't need other people to validate you because you're validated by the universe itself. You don't need other people to complete you because you're already whole. Now, I'm not saying that relationships aren't important. I'm not suggesting that you should become a hermit and never interact with anyone again. What I'm saying is that the quality of your relationships changes dramatically when you're not coming from a place of need. When you're not looking for someone to fix you or save you or make you feel worthy, you're free to have authentic connections. You're free to love people for who they are, not for what they can do for you. You're free to show up as your true self, not as the person you think others want you to be. But here's the thing. Not everyone can handle that level of authenticity. Not everyone is ready for that kind of real relationship. Most people are still wearing masks, still playing roles, still protecting themselves behind walls of pretense. And when you show up without a mask, when you're genuinely yourself, it makes them uncomfortable. It challenges them. It forces them to look at their own inauthenticity. And rather than do that inner work, rather than face their own shadows, they'll often reject you. They'll push you away. They'll tell you you're too intense, too serious, too much. And this hurts. Let's be honest about that. It hurts to be rejected. It hurts to be misunderstood. It hurts to watch people you care about walk away from you. But here's what you need to understand. Their rejection is not about you. It's about them. It's about their own fears, their own limitations, their own inability to meet you where you are. And you absolutely cannot make yourself smaller to make others feel bigger. You cannot dim your light to make others feel comfortable in their darkness. You cannot go backwards in your growth just to maintain relationships that no longer serve your highest good. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, but it's absolutely essential. You have to be willing to let people go. You have to be willing to walk away from relationships that are holding you back. You have to be willing to stand alone in your truth, even when everyone else is telling you you're wrong. Because here's what happens when you do that. Here's what happens when you honor yourself, even when it's difficult, even when it's scary, even when you feel completely alone. You create space. You create space in your life for something better. You create space for people who can match your energy, who can meet you at your level, who can appreciate you for who you truly are. You create space for opportunities that align with your authentic self. You create space for miracles to occur. But as long as you're holding on to things that no longer serve you, as long as you're trying to maintain relationships that require you to be someone you're not, there's no room for anything new. There's no room for growth. There's no room for the life you're meant to live. So you walk alone for a while. You walk through the wilderness. You walk through the uncertainty. You walk through the fear and the doubt and the loneliness. And it's hard. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But you keep walking. You keep putting one foot in front of the other. You keep moving forward even when you can't see where you're going. You keep trusting even when you have no evidence that things will work out. And then something shifts. Slowly, gradually, you start to realize that you're okay. You're more than okay. You're actually thriving. You're discovering parts of yourself you never knew existed. You're developing strengths you never knew you had. You're accessing wisdom you never knew was available. You're connecting with a power that's been inside you all along. You start to see that this time alone wasn't a curse. It was a gift. It was exactly what you needed. It was the universe giving you the space to grow, to heal, to transform. It was stripping away everything that wasn't truly you so that you could finally become who you were always meant to be. And here's the beautiful part. As you become more and more yourself, as you align more and more with your authentic nature, you start to attract people who resonate with that frequency. Not people who want to use you or control you or change you, but people who genuinely appreciate you. People who celebrate your growth. People who support your evolution. People who love you not despite who you are, but because of who you are. These are your true tribe. These are your soul family. And you could never have found them if you hadn't been willing to walk alone first. You could never have recognized them if you hadn't done the inner work. You could never have attracted them if you hadn't raised your own vibration. So you see, walking alone isn't the end of the story, it's just a chapter. It's an important chapter, a necessary chapter, but it's not where you stay forever. You walk alone so that you can learn to stand in your own power. You walk alone so that you can develop your own inner strength. You walk alone so that you can connect with your own divinity. And then, from that place of wholeness, from that place of completeness, you're able to come together with others in a way that's healthy, in a way that's balanced, in a way that's truly fulfilling. But let me tell you something else. Even when you find your tribe, even when you connect with your soul family, there will still be times when you need to walk alone. There will still be times when you need to go inward, when you need to reconnect with yourself, when you need to listen to that inner voice. Because the path of growth never ends. The path of evolution is ongoing. And each new level of consciousness requires you to shed another layer, to release another attachment, to let go of another limiting belief. This is why the chosen ones are always walking a path that others don't understand. They're not content with where they are. They're always growing, always evolving, always reaching for something higher. They're not satisfied with surface-level living. They want depth. They want meaning. They want truth. And that requires them to constantly move beyond their comfort zone, to constantly challenge themselves, to constantly push the boundaries of what they thought was possible. Most people settle. They find a comfortable place and they stop. They get to a certain point in their life and they decide that's good enough. They stop asking questions, they stop seeking answers, they stop growing. And there's no judgment in that. Everyone has the right to choose their own path. But if you're someone who can't stop growing, if you're someone who can't stop seeking, if you're someone who can't stop evolving, then you're going to naturally separate yourself from those who have chosen to settle. And that's okay. It has to be okay. Because you didn't come here to live someone else's life. You didn't come here to follow someone else's path. You came here to live your life, to walk your path, to fulfill your purpose. And your purpose might look very different from what others expect. Your purpose might require you to take risks that others aren't willing to take. Your purpose might demand sacrifices that others aren't willing to make. Your purpose might lead you down roads that others are too afraid to travel, but you have to follow it anyway. You have to honor it. You have to trust it, because that's why you're here. That's what you signed up for. Before you came into this physical body, before you took your first breath in this lifetime, you made an agreement. You agreed to be a light bearer. You agreed to be a way shower. You agreed to be someone who would wake up and help others wake up. Now, being chosen doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. It doesn't mean you're special in the way the ego wants to be special. It means you have a responsibility. It means you have a calling. It means you have a mission. And that mission is to live as an example of what's possible, to show others that there's another way to live, to demonstrate that you can break free from conditioning and programming and limitation, to prove that you can create a life of joy and peace and fulfillment regardless of external circumstances. But you can't do that if you're still trying to please everyone. You can't do that if you're still seeking approval from others. You can't do that if you're still living according to other people's rules and expectations. You have to be willing to stand alone in your truth. You have to be willing to be misunderstood. You have to be willing to be criticized and judged and rejected, because that comes with the territory. That comes with choosing to live authentically in a world that rewards conformity. And the irony is that the very people who judge you, the very people who criticize you, the very people who reject you, they're often the ones who secretly admire what you're doing. They're often the ones who wish they had the courage to do the same thing. But they're too afraid. They're too attached to what others think. They're too invested in maintaining their image. So instead of following their own truth, they try to tear down yours. They try to make you doubt yourself. They try to make you question your path. Don't let them. Don't give your power away to people who are living in fear. Don't let other people's limitations become your limitations. Don't let other people's fears become your fears. You know what's true for you. You know what feels right in your heart. You know what your soul is calling you to do. Trust that. Honor that. Follow that no matter what anyone else says. Because here's the truth that most people don't understand. When you're aligned with your authentic self, when you're living in integrity with your highest values, when you're following your inner guidance, you're being supported by the entire universe, you're being backed by a power that's greater than any obstacle you'll face, you're being guided by an intelligence that knows exactly where you need to go and what you need to do. But you have to trust it. You have to surrender to it. You have to let go of trying to control everything and allow yourself to be led. And that requires tremendous faith. That requires tremendous courage. That requires you to walk into the unknown without any guarantees, without any assurances, without any safety nets. This is what separates the chosen ones from everyone else. They're willing to take that leap. They're willing to trust that leap. They're willing to walk forward even when they can't see the ground beneath their feet. They know that when you're doing what you're meant to be doing, when you're living your purpose, the universe conspires to support you. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. Opportunities appear that you couldn't have planned for. People show up at exactly the right time with exactly what you need. But none of that can happen if you're still clinging to the old. None of that can happen if you're still trying to fit into a life that's too small for you. None of that can happen if you're still surrounding yourself with people who don't support your growth. You have to be willing to let it all go. You have to be willing to walk away from anything and anyone that's not aligned with your highest good. You have to be willing to stand alone if that's what it takes. And I know that sounds scary. I know it feels overwhelming. I know there are moments when you question whether you're doing the right thing. There are moments when you wonder if maybe everyone else is right and you're wrong. There are moments when the loneliness feels so intense that you consider going back, giving up, settling for less than what you know you deserve. But in those moments, in those difficult moments, you have to remember why you started this path in the first place. You have to remember what it felt like to be living inauthentically, to be pretending to be someone you're not, to be silencing your true voice. You have to remember the pain of betraying yourself, the emptiness of living a lie, the despair of knowing you're meant for something more, but being too afraid to reach for it. And then you have to remember what it feels like now, even with all the challenges, even with all the difficulties, even with all the loneliness. Because even in the hard times, there's a peace that comes from living authentically. There's a joy that comes from honoring your truth. There's a power that comes from standing in your integrity. And that's worth more than any approval you could get from others. That's worth more than any relationship that requires you to be less than you are. That's worth more than any comfort you could find by playing it safe. You are not meant to play it safe. You are not meant to live a small life. You are not meant to hide your light, or diminish your gifts, or shrink yourself to fit into boxes that were never designed for you. You are meant to expand. You are meant to grow. You are meant to become the fullest expression of who you truly are. And yes, that means walking alone sometimes. Yes, that means facing your fears. Yes, that means being uncomfortable and uncertain and vulnerable. But it also means waking up every day knowing that you're living with integrity. It means looking in the mirror and recognizing the person staring back at you. It means going to bed at night with peace in your heart because you know you honored yourself. It means experiencing a connection to something greater than yourself that fills you up from the inside out. It means accessing a joy that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It means finding a strength that can't be shaken by other people's opinions. This is what's available to you when you choose the path of authenticity. This is what's waiting for you on the other side of fear. This is what you gain when you're willing to walk alone. And it's not that you'll always be alone. That's not the point. The point is that you're complete within yourself. You're whole within yourself. You don't need anyone else to make you feel worthy or valuable or enough. You already are all of those things. And from that place of wholeness, from that place of completeness, you're able to show up in the world in a completely different way. You're able to give from a place of overflow rather than emptiness. You're able to love from a place of abundance rather than need. You're able to serve from a place of strength rather than depletion. You become a source of light for others, not because you're trying to be, but because that's simply what you are when you're aligned with your true nature. This is the gift that the chosen ones bring to the world. Not by preaching or teaching or trying to convince anyone of anything, but simply by being themselves, simply by living as an example of what's possible, simply by demonstrating that you can break free from the matrix of conditioning and limitation and create a life that's authentic and meaningful and fulfilling. And yes, you'll walk alone at times. Yes, you'll be misunderstood at times. Yes, you'll be rejected at times. But you'll also experience moments of pure magic. You'll also witness miracles unfolding in your life. You'll also connect with people and experiences and opportunities that take your breath away. You'll also feel a sense of purpose and meaning that makes every challenge worth it. Because when you're living your truth, when you're following your calling, when you're